Her kids ghosted her for years, so she rewrote her $4 million will. What happened next shocked the entire town. A quiet caregiver became a millionaire overnight, and the entitled heirs? They got nothing but a lesson in regret. You won't believe how this revenge story ends. She used to sit by the window every Sunday at 4 p.m., clutching a plate of freshly baked cookies, her eyes searching the driveway for headlights that never came. Her name was Margaret Simmons, 84 years old, sharp as a tack, and once the proud matriarch of a sprawling family. A retired nurse, widow of a decorated war veteran and mother of 3 successful children. A lawyer, a tech executive, and a real estate broker. On paper, her life was golden. But no one visited. Not on Christmas. Not on birthdays. Not even when she broke her hip and needed help going to the bathroom. For 5 years, Margaret was nothing but a name on a group text chain. Her life was reduced to occasional voice messages and bland bank transfers labeled for meds. Then came Rosa, a quiet, observant, warm-hearted caregiver from Guatemala who'd been hired through an agency. Rosa didn't just refill Margaret's pill organizer or cook her lunch. She listened. She laughed. She massaged Margaret's swollen feet without being asked. And slowly, something inside Margaret shifted. So when the end came and the lawyer opened Margaret's $4 million will, jaws hit the marble floor. The kids got nothing. Rosa got it all. Now, this isn't just a revenge story, it's a wake-up call. A cautionary tale with drama, betrayal, and the kind of twist that would make a courtroom gasp. If you're a parent, a child, or a caregiver, don't scroll past this, because what Margaret did next will shock you. Like, share, subscribe, because this isn't fiction, it's family. Every Sunday felt like a cruel rerun. Margaret would wait by the window, a fresh pot of chamomile steeping in the background, the cookies soft and warm. Her knees hurt, her back ached, but she stood anyway because maybe this time they'd come. Her oldest, Daniel, used to be such a sweet boy. He'd bring her flowers from the neighbor's yard and read to her when she had long shifts at the hospital. No, he hadn't shown up in 3 years, not even when she was hospitalized. She remembered the last voicemail. "Hey mom, sorry, crazy week. I'll swing by next Sunday." That was 18 Sundays ago. Catherine, the middle child, was too busy with real estate and yoga retreats. Her texts came in bursts, often when Margaret asked about seeing the grandkids. Margaret would respond with hearts. The answers were always thumbs-up emojis. And Benjamin? He called. Sometimes. Always multitasking, always distracted. Always with an urgent meeting. Her house echoed with silence. Chapter 2, The Agency Sends Help. Margaret resisted the idea at first. A stranger in her home? No thank you. But after she slipped in the kitchen and lay on the floor for 4 hours before a neighbor knocked, she had no choice. "Her name is Rosa," the agency said. She expected someone cold, efficient, robotic, but Rosa was none of that. She arrived with a calm presence and homemade tamales. She greeted Margaret like an old friend. She didn't ask intrusive questions, she let the quiet do the work. And in that silence, something new began. 85th, a milestone. Margaret wore her best lilac sweater. She got her hair done. The dining table was set for 6. She waited and waited. No calls, no flowers, just Rosa. The caregiver had brought balloons, a tiny cake with a crooked 85, and a tearful hug. Margaret cried herself to sleep that night. But not from sadness, from relief. At least someone remembered. It started as a joke. "If I ever win the lottery, Rosa, you're getting half." Rosa laughed, wiping down the counter. "No need, Senora Margaret. You give me more than enough already." But that night, Margaret pulled out her old will. Daniel would get the lake house. Catherine, the investment portfolio. Benjamin, the classic car collection. Margaret stared at the names, the numbers, the ink. And then she took a pen and began crossing things out. "I just want to be clear, Mrs. Simmons," said Mr. Carmichael, her longtime estate attorney. "You're removing all 3 children from the will?" "Entirely." "Yes," Margaret replied. "And you're leaving your entire estate, $4 million, to your caregiver Rosa Lopez?" "Yes." The lawyer hesitated. "You do understand this will likely be contested." Margaret met his gaze. "Let them try." The news came as a shock to the Simmons children. Catherine scoffed. She's old. Probably confused. Benjamin laughed. It's a phase. She's lonely and emotional. This'll blow over. Daniel, however, wasn't so sure. He'd seen the look in his mother's eyes that one Thanksgiving they forgot to pick her up. She'd waited in the rain in a dress and heels for 2 hours. When they finally arrived, she didn't cry. He didn't yell. She just smiled, the saddest smile he'd ever seen. The call came at 6:42 p.m. on a Tuesday. Rosa was crying. "Senora Margaret, she's gone." Daniel dropped the phone. The funeral was quiet. Rosa sat in the front row, holding Margaret's rosary. The kids arrived late. None of them spoke during the service. Afterward, Carmichael handed them sealed envelopes. Letters. From their mother. Catherine made the first post. "My mother was manipulated by her caregiver and disinherited her own children. #elder abuse, #justice for Margaret." Within hours, the post went viral. TikTokers took sides. Reddit exploded with theories. But someone else posted a video. Rosa sitting quietly holding Margaret's hand during her final days. Whispering bedtime stories. Praying with her. Cleaning wounds. Suddenly the tide turned. He showed up at Rosa's doorstep. "You win. Congratulations. But please, can I see the house? One last time." Rosa hesitated, then nodded. Daniel wandered the rooms, touching the memories. The family photos were still on the walls. But one thing had changed. A single framed note on the mantel. "To Rosa, the daughter I never had. Love, Margaret. Dear Catherine, Daniel, Benjamin. If you're reading this, I'm gone. Don't cry. You already mourned me by absence. You left me behind not in a home but in loneliness. Rosa gave me more love in 1 week than I got from you in 1 year. This isn't revenge. It's honesty. I hope you learned something from it. Love, Mom." It took less than a week after Margaret's burial for the siblings to file paperwork with the county courthouse. "Unjust influence," the petition read. "We believe our mother was not of sound mind when she altered her will." Rosa received the papers with trembling hands. She had never stepped foot inside a courtroom, let alone been the center of one. But Margaret had warned her. "They'll come for you," she said softly one afternoon. "Just remember who you are and who I was when I met you." Rosa wiped her tears and called Mr. Carmichael. She wore the same navy dress she wore at the funeral. Her hands clenched in her lap. The courtroom was quiet. Daniel's attorney grilled her. "Miss Lopez, isn't it true you were receiving payments from Mrs. Simmons?" "Yes," Rosa said. "I was paid as her caregiver. $22 an hour. She insisted on paying me herself." "Did you ever encourage her to change her will?" "No. Never." "Did she ever appear confused, forgetful?" Rosa paused. "No." Margaret was sharp. "She did Sudoku puzzles faster than I could finish cooking rice." The gallery laughed softly. Even the judge smiled. Mr. Carmichael had been Margaret's lawyer for over 20 years. But under oath, he revealed something shocking. "There was a second draft of the will," he said. "Unfiled. In it, Margaret split the estate, 70% to Rosa, 30% to her grandchildren." Catherine leaned forward. "Wait, grandchildren?" "Yes," Carmichael confirmed. She felt her children had abandoned her, but hoped the next generation wouldn't. The courtroom buzzed with murmurs. Later that night, Daniel visited the old family church. He hadn't been inside in decades. He sat in the back pew and cried. He remembered the time Margaret stayed up with him during his chickenpox, the way she used to press his forehead with cold towels. He remembered the last Mother's Day he ignored her call. He called Catherine. "We were wrong," he said. "Mom wasn't crazy. We were just selfish." Carmichael presented the second will in court. Though unsigned, it bore Margaret's fingerprints, literally. She'd handled it, marked it, and initialed the margins. The judge was intrigued. "This suggests intent. But legally, the executed will still stands unless we prove fraud or incapacity." Daniel stood. "Your Honor, I no longer wish to contest the will." Gasps. Catherine hissed at him from her seat. "What are you doing?" But Daniel looked at Rosa. "She deserved it. We didn't." Rosa wiped her eyes. It started with a headline on a local blog. "Elderly woman leaves $4 million estate to immigrant caregiver. kids outraged. By noon, the story had exploded across major networks. Cable news panels debated it. Podcasts titled episodes, "Love or Manipulation? The Rosa Lopez Story." Rosa sat in silence, watching her own face flash across the television. Even her hometown newspaper in Guatemala featured her on the front page. Margaret had told her once, "You'll be famous for the wrong reasons." Catherine, fuming from the courtroom loss, contacted an investigator. "I want dirt. Anything. Fraud, money issues, deportation, I don't care." The man was thorough. He combed through Rosa's immigration records, tax filings, employment history, even her Facebook account. A week later, he returned. "She's clean. Beyond clean. If anything, she's overqualified. You sure she's not the real daughter?" Catherine fired him on the spot. Rosa didn't want to speak, but when a well-known journalist reached out, someone Margaret had admired, she said yes. She wore Margaret's favorite brooch. "I didn't ask for this," Rosa said quietly. "I just did what anyone with a heart should do. I took care of her because she mattered." The host asked, "Did you know she'd leave you everything?" Rosa shook her head. "She left me her stories. That was enough." The interview went viral. Overnight, Rosa was a symbol of compassion, loyalty, and unexpected justice. TikTokers made edits of Margaret and Rosa baking together. Reddit threads labeled the children as villains. Support poured in from across the country. Flowers were delivered to Margaret's gravesite. Rosa's mailbox overflowed with thank you letters. But so did threats. "You stole from her family," one anonymous note read. "You'll get what's coming." In a surprising twist, Catherine's 19-year-old daughter, Lila, posted a video on Instagram. "My mom never let us see Grandma," she said. "Said she was a burden. I wish I had known her the way Rosa did." The video shook everything. Daniel's son followed suit. "Rosa, if you're seeing this, thank you for loving my grandmother when we didn't." Public sympathy tilted fully toward Rosa. Even Carmichael, watching from his office, murmured, "Margaret, you always knew how to make an impact." Catherine wasn't done. With public opinion against her and the first challenge failing, she tried a new route: wrongful influence and emotional manipulation. The new claim painted Rosa as a cunning schemer, preying on an old woman's grief. She alienated Margaret from her children, Catherine's attorney told the press. Carmichael sighed. "This is getting ridiculous." But Rosa still had to appear in court. Chapter 22. Rosa's immigration status targeted. An anonymous tip was sent to immigration authorities. Suddenly, Rosa received notice. Her residency renewal was under review. Someone was digging. The stress made her physically ill. But Daniel stepped in. He contacted a pro bono immigration attorney. "If my mother were here, she'd fight for her. I'm doing the same." Rosa, trembling, whispered, "Gracias." Daniel went to Carmichael with an idea. Create the Margaret Simmons Compassion Foundation, a non-profit supporting caregivers and the elderly. He pledged $500,000 from his own investments to seed the fund. "It's not about the money," he said. "It's about doing right by her, finally." Rosa agreed to join the board. Catherine refused. An encrypted email arrived in Carmichael's inbox with the subject, "For Rosa, from M." It was dated 3 weeks before Margaret's death. Inside, a scanned photo of a young Margaret in nurse scrubs beside a woman who looked exactly like Rosa. A note followed. "She reminds me of Esperanza, the one I couldn't save in Guatemala. Maybe that's why I held on. Maybe that's why I let go." Carmichael forwarded it without a word. Rosa read the message 3 times. Esperanza. Her aunt. The one who died in a U.S. clinic decades ago. She had always heard whispers, family stories, but no details. Could Margaret have known her? Treated her? Rosa called her mother in Guatemala. The answer stunned her. Yes. Esperanza spoke of a kind American nurse who stayed by her side. Her name was Margaret. Tears fell freely. Everything made sense. The bond, the inheritance, the sense of destiny. It wasn't just gratitude, it was closure. For both of them. Catherine wasn't done. With the media heat dying down and the court's ruling pending, she knew she had one last card to play. Scandal. A distraction. something explosive. She paid a tabloid journalist to expose Rosa as a fraud. Old photos of Rosa in a bar uniform from her teenage years in Mexico were twisted into a false narrative of her being a party girl, implying she manipulated Margaret with sob stories. The headline screamed, "Gold-digging caregiver conned elderly heiress." The article spread like wildfire. Catherine beamed in interviews, smugly repeating, "I only want what's fair." Rosa, devastated, shut herself inside. She refused interviews, declined invitations, and barely spoke to Daniel, who now stood firmly in her corner. "I was a waitress," she told Daniel quietly, "in a bar, to pay for my brother's surgery. Is that so shameful?" "No," Daniel said, gripping her hand. "It's noble. And we're not letting her win." While looking through Margaret's files to prepare the foundation launch, Daniel stumbled on a folder labeled "For Rosa, when she's ready." Inside was a letter from Margaret and a DNA test. Daniel blinked. Margaret had done a 23andMe test, and she'd requested Rosa do the same. Results enclosed. Margaret and Rosa were distant cousins. Distant but real. Rosa was family by blood. Daniel didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He ran to Rosa with the envelope. She opened it, read it in silence. Her shoulders shook. I don't know what to say." Daniel smiled. "Say this, I am exactly where I belong." 6 months later, Rosa hosted the Margaret Prescott Foundation's inaugural gala. She wore Margaret's favorite necklace. Daniel gave a heartfelt speech. Celebrities, journalists, and donors filled the room. The foundation's mission was clear: support aging women abandoned by family, provide care, companionship, and dignity. And in the back of the room, unnoticed by most, stood Catherine, watching alone. She'd lost the lawsuit, lost public favor, lost Daniel. And deep down, she knew she'd lost Margaret long before she ever died. The next morning, Rosa posted a video. No makeup, no fancy production. "I was once just a caregiver. I never imagined inheriting anything. I only wanted to love and protect someone who was lonely like I once was." She looked into the camera. "And to Catherine, if you're watching, I forgive you. Truly." The video went viral. Celebrities reshared it. Oprah commented. Rosa was invited to speak at caregiving conferences. Catherine, for once, remained silent. But the video played on her laptop for weeks. A month after the gala, Rosa received a surprise email from Margaret's lawyer. It contained a final gift, a private video Margaret had recorded weeks before she died. "Rosa," she said with a shaky smile, "if you're watching this, it means you stood tall. I always knew you would." She paused. "I gave you my estate not to punish my children, but to honor love. You gave me more joy in 3 years than they did in 30. She chuckled. "If they're mad, tell them to get a dog. Or better yet, learn to listen." The screen faded to black. Rosa wept. But it was the good kind of crying. The kind that says, "I'm home." Daniel sat in his mother's old sunroom, the one place in the mansion still untouched since her passing. Sunlight streamed through the lace curtains. He held Rosa's letter in one hand, the foundation plans in the other. And for the first time in months, he felt grounded. "I can't change the past," he said aloud. "But I can change what happens next." He officially joined the Margaret Waverley Foundation as its first family ambassador. He traveled to local schools and senior centers, sharing the story of his mother, her legacy, and the importance of showing up for your elders, for your community, for yourself. He wasn't looking for redemption. He was building it. Catherine's social circle thinned like smoke in the wind. Friends stopped calling. Dinners went unattended. Even her children, who once rallied around her outrage, began distancing themselves. The scandal, the lawsuits, the media backlash. It was too much. But what truly broke her was a voicemail from her youngest son. "Mom, I love you, but I think Grandma was right. We need to be better people." Alone in her sterile penthouse, Catherine stared out over the skyline. Her empire meant nothing. Margaret had taught her one final lesson. You can't buy love, and you sure as hell can't inherit it. In a quiet courtroom, the last of the inheritance lawsuits was formally dismissed. Catherine didn't even show up. Rosa did. She stood beside Daniel as the judge ruled that the will was valid, the estate secure, and the foundation untouchable. No appeals. No more games. Outside, reporters waited. Rosa gave them a single line. Love and loyalty are stronger than bloodlines. Mrs. Waverly knew that. And then she turned Daniel beside her and walked into the rest of her life. Rosa created her own will that very month. She had no children, no spouse. But she had legacy. She named the Margaret Waverly Foundation as her primary beneficiary. And she started mentoring young caregivers, sharing her story, teaching them how to hold on to kindness in a world that sometimes treats kindness as weakness. Daniel created a scholarship fund in Margaret's name. The boardroom that once echoed with entitlement now buzzed with purpose. The mansion became a rotating residence for families caring for aging parents. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. One morning, Rosa packed a small suitcase and left a handwritten note on the foundation desk. "I've given what I came to give. Now it's time for others to build. Thank you for trusting me." No one knew where she went. Some said she returned to Guatemala. Others believed she joined a silent retreat in the mountains. Daniel kept her room in the mansion just as it was, just in case. And every year on Margaret's birthday, a bouquet of marigolds would arrive. No sender, no note, just the soft scent of love that lingers long after the door has closed. The house was quieter now, though laughter from the occasional children's charity visits still echoed faintly in the halls. One afternoon, Daniel found a sealed envelope propped against Margaret's framed photo on the mantel. It was addressed simply, "To the one who still listens." It was from Rosa. She had left it before departing the estate, wanting no big goodbyes or announcements. In the letter, she thanked Daniel and even Catherine for teaching her things about strength, about pride, and about choosing peace over conflict. "Margaret gave me more than I could ever repay," Rosa had written. "She gave me a family. Now it's time for me to help someone else the way she helped me." Daniel read the letter twice, and then a third time with tears in his eyes. She was gone but not lost. At the first annual gala of the Margaret Whitmore Foundation for Compassionate Care, Daniel stood at the podium in a tuxedo that felt tighter around the heart than the chest. "I used to think love came with conditions," he began, scanning the crowd. "With deadlines, with transactions. But my mother, she loved on her own terms. Fully, bravely, quietly." He spoke of her lonely final years, of the woman who showed up when no one else did, and of the will that changed their lives. What she left behind was never just money. It was a challenge, to live better, to see people fully, to show up. The room erupted in applause. Even the critics in the audience stood. No one expected Catherine to attend the gala. But halfway through dessert she appeared, dressed in plain navy blue, no dramatic entrance, no entourage. Her once vibrant hair was tied back simply, her posture less stiff, her eyes less guarded. She didn't speak at the podium. Instead, she sat at the back of the room listening. Afterward, she approached Daniel. "I thought I could hate her forever," she said quietly. "But it turns out she just wanted to be heard." Daniel nodded, unsure what to say. Catherine handed him a small velvet box. Inside was Margaret's pearl brooch. "She wanted Rosa to have this," she said. "I made a mistake. I'm fixing what I can." Months later, Daniel traveled to El Paso, where Rosa had opened a small home for aging Latina caregivers. He arrived unannounced, clutching the brooch. Rosa hugged him tightly, tears spilling. "I didn't expect you. You always said showing up is everything," he smiled. They sat together on the front porch, watching the desert sun dip low. "She believed in me more than I believed in myself," Rosa said, her voice cracking. "You and Catherine, you didn't have to forgive, but you did." "We're still learning," Daniel said. They laughed, cried, and watched as one of Rosa's caregivers rolled a laughing patient down the path in a wheelchair, the future quietly unfolding. Back at the Whitmore estate, the nursery wing had been transformed into a respite suite for burned-out caregivers. The art room hosted painting sessions. The solarium became a space for silent meditation. Daniel walked the halls every evening, flipping switches, whispering memories into corners. Sometimes he still expected to see Rosa humming in the kitchen or Margaret reading by the fire. He paused by the fireplace one night, pulling out his phone. A saved voicemail played. Margaret's voice, clear and kind. "If they don't remember you by your kindness, what's the point?" The screen dimmed and Daniel smiled. Not every story ended the way you thought. sometimes it ended better. And this one had just begun again. Like, here, subscribe. Because some stories deserve to be told, especially when they involve love, legacy, and the unexpected power of showing up.